Okay, J Frontier 1. As I said yesterday, I'm going to be making a bit more elaborate video discussing the nuances and whatnot of science and why God can never be without strong evidence, and I mean actual evidence, an answer. And the biggest problem is going back to what I've mentioned is that even if you could prove that God was required to create the universe, whose God? I'm sure you would say it's a Christian God, but for anybody else, it's going to be just as likely to be possibly any other God. And you don't get to just stick your God in there because you believe it's your God. You need strong evidence to prove it. And most of the evidence that even comes close to proving, though, they're all full fallacies and problems, only prove a deistic God if you accept them. They don't bring you to the Christian God or the Muslim God or the Hindu God from there. You need something else, a belief or something to get you from that point to there. As a atheist, I need stronger evidence than just deductive or ontological reasoning. A big point here is that, if we take your answer of it being God that did it and there is no natural explanation, then we stop all inquiry and we don't get to find the natural reason if there is one. If you just assume, that evolution was entirely by God, and as the creationists try to do with the micro-macro evolution distinction, then we would never get to where we are now. We would never have gained our knowledge of evolution and how it works and the tree of life. If we just accept abiogenesis being nothing but God blinking or snapping his fingers and causing life to form, then we're never going to learn the answers about abiogenesis if there are answers out there. We're getting closer. If we were to just assume that the brain functions entirely by God and there is no natural explanation, then we're never going to find out the natural explanation if there is one. If we just assume that the Big Bang was created by God and there was nothing beforehand and there was no natural explanation for it, then we'll miss those natural explanations if there are any. These are the problems. If your God doesn't exist, or your God, or a God, used natural methods to create everything, just by sitting there and saying God did it, isn't going to solve anything. If it's just said that God did it for so many things throughout history, we wouldn't be where we are now with technology and our understanding of the natural world. Your God isn't an answer, it's a stop point. It's a point of saying, beyond this, I'm uncomfortable with science figuring it out, so I'm going to stick God here. And that's just a bad problem. Science has to rely on what is as verifiable as possible. And you're going to point out things and say that these things haven't been proven, like I said with M theory and other stuff. Well, that's true. But these aren't theories yet. These are just tentative hypotheses. We're looking for the answers, and we're hoping to find answers. We're getting closer and closer. But it doesn't mean that we accept them as 100% fact, but it also doesn't mean that we discard them because we don't have the answers. We look for answers. We study. We explore. We try to find answers because beyond answers is where the truth is. as we gain more knowledge and as we learn more, we will gain more. And even if we can't ever find the answers, we will have gained so much more by trying to search and trying to find out. Even if we can never figure out how the brain works to cause sentience and whatnot. So what? Just trying to find out and exploring and figuring out what the brain does will teach us and learn more about the brain and maybe ways to cure diseases, help people with brain damage, and so on. We can find so many ways to improve our knowledge. That's what science is. Science is innovation through search for knowledge. So many advancements in our technology were created by some of the things that were not very, adequate necessarily to advancing human technology and life. Like the LHC, it's not necessarily by itself going to produce things that are going to bring revolutions in technology, but many of the stuff that went into building it, the tools needed, and the knowledge that needed to be gained to create it, these things, by byproducts, can teach us. And it's quite possible that the LHC will create and teach us about things they're already working with, trying to contain antimatter and so on. So there are always these things that we will gain knowledge from the search. Sticking God did it. Doesn't get us this knowledge. It says, beyond this point, you must stop. That doesn't get us anywhere. Science can't accept religion and supernatural and whatnot for answers, because for every answer, there's a billion other possible answers that can be answered the same way. If it's a God, which of the thousands of gods is it? If it was demons, could it actually have been fairies? Could it have been angels? Could it have been juju? Or could it have been aliens tricking us? Or God personally tricking us? When you start to stick supernatural into things, then every single possibility becomes a possibility. The experiment didn't work because God tampered with it. I know that seems absurd, but that is the entire point. If we can't find the answers without adding in the idea of supernatural, then we're not finding answers. No reason why science must accept any answer over God, even if it is absurd, is because so many things about the reality is absurd. Looking at the world, it's flat to us. From our limited perspective, it looks flat, unless you look at the ocean and whatnot. But when you look out, and you actually look at it from your space, you can tell that it's not flat. Quantum mechanics is absurd. Many of the planets and stuff we find in the universe, in our galaxy, are absurd and belie our original conceived ideas. Reality itself is absurd. That doesn't stop us from looking for them, because an answer is an answer, whether or not it's simple or absurd. And we must accept the answer whether or not we like it. You don't get to decide reality based upon your personal preferences. Science looks for answers. It doesn't look for what it wants. It looks for what is there. And it doesn't always succeed, but it does its best. And it is the best method we have for finding truth. This is my last thoughts on this, and next one will be pointing out and actually going over some of the finer details of some of the accusations and claims he made. So I'll be doing that possibly tomorrow.